As you might imagine, I love stories. Shocking. Have you ever listened to a story and were a bit confused? And say, hey, that's not how that story goes. That's not the way I heard it. As Reverend Lane said earlier in the service, when a story is shared by oral tradition, so being shared from one person to another from memory, it tends to change every time it's told, depending on what the storyteller can remember, emphasizing their favorite parts, and maybe changing it if they can think of something better. When stories are written down, they tend to stay the same. But if you look at really, really old stories, like the one we heard today, you can find that they used to be passed down by oral tradition. And so when you go to find written versions, you'll find different versions of the story. Now, have any of you ever heard another version of the Persephone story? Yeah? Cool, excellent. It's so interesting, I think, to find different perspectives in each version of the story. Now, traditionally, Demeter, the goddess of plant life and agriculture, very much loves her daughter, who? Yes and no. In the original stories, Persephone starts out being called Kore. Kore, which means maiden or the girl. Because at that point, that's all she is. She's Demeter's girl. And she hangs out with her mom and is lovely and sweet. And the trouble starts when Hades falls in love with her or just decides he wants to marry her. And some stories said he asks Demeter to marry him. And she says no. But then he goes and steals her anyway. And it just so happens that Zeus and Helios, the sun, see it, because they're up there looking down and stuff. And most stories say that Hades arranged to marry Kore with Zeus, who was believed to be her father, patriarchal society here. And they don't tell Demeter that they made this arrangement, and Hades just steals Kore away, and Helios, the sun, happens to see it because he's up there being the sun. Demeter, of course, is distraught and heartbroken. She has no idea where her daughter has gone. She looks everywhere, and she asks Helios. He feels compassion for her and tells her that Hades took Kore. Now you figure the goddess of plants and the sun have some sort of a relationship. I like to imagine that they're close friends. They work together all the time. And then this is what ties the sun into the whole mythology of the seasons. Demeter demands Zeus return her daughter, but Zeus refuses because he can do that. Demeter goes on strike, refuses to grow things. The people of Earth start to suffer, grow cold, and run out of food. And Zeus really likes people because he likes being worshipped, and he doesn't want them all to die. And so he calls a meeting together with Demeter and Hades and Kore. But not Kore anymore. Not girl or maiden, but Persephone. At this point, her name changes. And you could say it's because she got married. Some people change their name when that happens. But maybe it's because she grew up and found herself and wasn't just the girl anymore. The name Persephone means bringer of death. Isn't that interesting? What a turn from being Demeter's daughter to the bringer of death. But what can that mean? Let's side note that one. Zeus asks Persephone where she would like to live. Persephone says in the underworld. Demeter, her mother, assumes it's a trick, and we hear that Hades tricked her into eating 7 pomegranate seeds that would tie her to the underworld. So Zeus rules that Persephone must split her time between her mother Demeter and Hades, her husband. Thus, the seasons. But here are some details from the ancient stories that give us support for the new direction in the feminist tellings of the stories like we heard today. Persephone was elected queen of the underworld. It's a specific, interesting word in the translation. The dead chose her to be their queen. Not because she married Hades. She wanted to go back and live there. Maybe it wasn't a trick. Maybe she actually wanted to be there all along, but her mother just couldn't believe it. What do you mean you're dropping out of pharmacy school to become a social worker? A traditional holiday conversation. In other stories, and this comes to the bringer of death, Persephone is most often the person who meets and greets people who have recently died. She's the welcome wagon for the underworld. Maybe she's the bringer of death because they're her posse. She brings them along with her. They hang out. She welcomes them. She cares for them. She's an angel to give them comfort. In many of the stories, if people came to the underworld to ask for something or they were in trouble, it was Persephone that they would talk to, not Hades. And she would decide what to do and how to use her power. So what does this all have to do with solstice revolution? This is often a story shared at the spring solstice, when Persephone is coming back and helping with springtime. But I think it has a lot of wisdom to offer in the coldest, darkest time of the year, or in the coldest, darkest times in our lives. Let's start with Zeus. You can't go making important life choices for other people. It's not okay. He grows to see how his choice affected others, not just Persephone and Demeter, but all the people of the world, to come to realize that we are all connected. To resolve the problem, he does what should have been done in the first place. He asks Kore, or Persephone, what she wants. It sounds in the story like she loves both of her roles, growing things with her mother and being queen of the underworld. And kudos to Zeus for giving her and us permission to do both. It's okay to have two callings, to work and be a parent, to love the winter and get tired of it after a while, to be sad on holidays and happy on gloomy days, and not fit into the traditional binary that people expect you to. You don't have to feel or be just one thing all the time, and you won't. Helios, the sun. The story tells us he had compassion for his friend Demeter, that when she refused to work, the world got colder and darker, but she's not the sun or the sun god, he is. Helios stayed with his friend. When she protested injustice being done to her, he protested too. Maybe the extra time that the sun isn't in the sky in the winter is because it's underground, keeping Mother Nature warm, being her friend, keeping her company while she's missing her daughter. Helios shows us what it means to be a friend and ally in the dark days. Demeter teaches us about sadness and grief, that it comes in cycles. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes harder. But after however many thousands of years we've had seasons, I really hope nobody says to her, "Aren't you over that yet?" She also teaches us what it means to be a parent, to watch your child grow into their own person and away from you. I like to think that though Demeter is sorry to see Persephone go each year, she's also proud of the amazing goddess she's become. I imagine Hades like the beast from Beauty and the Beast. Social skills are not his strength. He's impulsive. He may be in charge of the underworld, but doesn't necessarily have the skill set to run the place. Whether he asked Demeter or Zeus, he should have asked Kore if she wanted to be the CEO of the underworld, because that's really the role she takes on. When we're feeling stressed and overworked, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to recognize things that are not in your skill set. You can't do everything. I know, it's hard and a shock, but it's true. And it's okay to try and engage someone else who has that skill set to join you in your ministry. This is totally a ministry technique, by the way. If you're asked to join a committee, it's probably because it's not one of our best things. Thank you. Thank you for your service. And both Demeter and Hades teach us that the people we love are beings in their own right, and we need to find ways to show our love without inflicting what we want on them. A lesson that's good to hear before the holidays. Kore, or Persephone, what if, like our story tells us, is going to the underworld because she wanted to all along, but getting there was not what she expected. Sometimes in pursuing our dreams, we fall on our face. Things that we didn't want to happen. And we wonder if we should have even started this to begin with. Was it all a mistake? Some feminist scholars say that when we rewrite this story, we should not take out the part about Kore being taken against her will. Because without the part of the story where you fall down, we can't tell the part of the story where you get back up again. Which of these characters do you relate to most in this season of your life? Which version of this story do you like best? How is the dark nurturing or serving you this year? This solstice, I pray that you know there are many ways to feel, be, or do things, and you don't have to choose just one. I pray you have the courage to make choices not make choices that affect others without first hearing their voice and asking what they want and need. I pray you have the warmth and compassion to be a friend and ally to one who is suffering. I pray you honor your grief and know that it will not always feel like this. I pray that you have the strength to ask others for help, to acknowledge the gifts you see in others. And I pray that you have the tenacity to follow your calling, even and especially when you fall on your face. May the wisdom of the ages give us hope, comfort, and joy this solstice. May it be so. No. Please join in our closing.